Hey everyone, this is Eric Pratt, and I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from all of us here at Gun Owners of America. We at GOA are truly thankful for you. Your support and your activism made it possible for us to spend another year defending the Second Amendment in Capitol buildings and courthouses across the country. And truth be told, we couldn't do any of this without you. But before we walk through this year's victories, I want to pause and just acknowledge the loss of one of our greatest champions of the Second Amendment, my dear friend, Sam Paredes. Sam served on GOA's board and led Gun Owners of California with passion and conviction, and his passing hit our entire team hard. For those of you who knew him, you can understand why. Sam was one of a kind, and replacing him will be impossible. I know Sam would be proud of the work that was done this year. I just wish he was here to see it, but we can certainly honor his memory by celebrating the wins he cared so deeply about. So getting to that, we kicked off the year with a major court victory in all places, Sam's home state of California. Yes, the very anti-gun state of California. GOA, in conjunction with Gun Owners of California and other pro-gun groups, secured a preliminary injunction against the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department for refusing to issue non-resident concealed carry permits. Now, this was a huge victory because, coupled with another victory that I'll talk about in a few moments, it means that GOA members can travel coast to coast with concealed firearms, something that was not necessarily possible before this year. And then right on the heels of that win, we witnessed something historic from the White House. We saw the first ever pro-Second Amendment executive order. Truly, this was a generational move by President Trump. Normally, we're fighting executive orders like Biden's pistol brace ban or his universal background check scheme, which was all about registration. But this one empowered agencies to stand up for the Second Amendment. And in a few key cases, they did. The Treasury Secretary ended the discriminatory banking practices against the firearms industry.
Secretary of Health RFK Jr. shut down the Biden-era budget request for gun control research. So now there will be no more money for anti-gun studies in the appropriations bills Republicans are moving through the House.
And over at the ATF, we saw some long overdue firings. Anti-gun zealots like Marvin Richardson and Pamela Hicks, who had no problem terrorizing gun owners. Finally, they were sent packing.
But we also, yesterday, I fired the general counsel from ATF. You know, these people were targeting gun owners. Not going to happen under this administration.
Now, having said all this, if you've been keeping up with our recent updates, you know the DOJ has definitely earned itself a spot on Santa's naughty list for refusing to defend the repeal of the NFA in court. But earlier in the year, things were looking different. They launched a rights restoration program for nonviolent felons, and we'll be releasing a separate video breakdown on that soon. Plus, they killed the Biden ATF zero tolerance program, the one that GOA exposed, which had destroyed countless small gun shops over tiny paperwork errors. And that momentum didn't stop in Washington. GOA also went on offense in the states, restoring the right of self-defense where it mattered most. For example, in Wyoming, GOA helped repeal the state's gun-free zones. Now, this is something we'd been fighting for since 2022. Schools, public buildings, even the state capitol were all soft targets. But now, thanks to this new law, the people of Wyoming can defend themselves without being disarmed by the government. In Pennsylvania, GOA members crushed an Erie City Council proposal to ban homemade firearms and impose new limits on 3D printing. Council member Ed Brzezinski admitted that the flood of calls and emails from gun owners played a decisive role in stopping this ordinance. Look, don't let anyone ever tell you that grassroots activism doesn't work, because there are naysayers out there who'll tell you it's wasted time or effort to call your local politician. The truth is, the pro-gun movement relies on your grassroots activism to really punch above our weight. As an aside, I should point out that later in the year, GOA members would help defeat an entire slate of Bloomberg-styled gun control in Pennsylvania. We stopped one gun a month limits, a ban on so-called undetectable firearms, red flag gun confiscation orders, and a prohibition on certain machine gun conversion devices in the state house. And although a universal registration check bill did narrowly pass out of the House, GOA worked hand in hand with Republican leadership in the Senate to block it, shutting down any chance of it becoming law. One should note that these victories occurred in a blue state, and it was all due to the active involvement of our supporters. So kudos to our Pennsylvania members for all your hard work. Now, let's turn back to the victories we achieved during our very busy spring. Among the most significant, GOA secured a major accomplishment 5 years after we first sued the ATF for unlawfully revoking the Brady alternate status of states like Michigan and Alabama. As a result of our win, carry permit holders in those states can now bypass NICS background checks when purchasing firearms. You know, GOA has long maintained that all background checks are unconstitutional. So restoring the ability of law-abiding citizens to avoid the FBI's registration-style checks, that's a huge win for freedom. Anyway, that marked the end of a very busy spring. But then came summer, and while most folks were taking vacations, our federal team was in the trenches. For months, we've been working behind the scenes on a plan to dismantle the NFA using President Trump's reconciliation bill, now known as the One Big Beautiful Bill. It was a delicate operation. We had to keep it quiet long enough to prevent anti-gun Democrats from killing it. But what we didn't expect was a near fatal betrayal from within. Republican Representative David Kustoff on the Ways and Means Committee trying to sabotage the whole effort just to look moderate. That's when we called in the cavalry, and by cavalry, I mean you, our incredible GOA members and grassroots activists. You guys melted the phone lines, you jammed the switchboards, staffers literally had to turn off the phones because they couldn't keep up. And because of your effort, the bill made it out of the House and over to the Senate, where our allies strengthened it even further. In fact, at one point in the process, we had succeeded in working with legislators to put a full gutting of the NFA into the One Big Beautiful Bill, where suppressors, short-barreled firearms, and AOWs would no longer require registration. Unfortunately, at the last minute, a partisan bureaucrat struck down our NFA repeal provision. But here's the good news. GOA's legal team was ready. They worked around the clock so we could actually file suit immediately, and we're now in court fighting to remove SBRs, SBSs, AOWs, and suppressors from the NFA once and for all. Now, you'd think all of that would be enough work for 1 year, and honestly, you'd be right. Our federal team didn't sleep for the last 2 weeks of the Senate fight. But even while we were pushing this once-in-a-generation battle all the way to the president's desk, they kept racking up victories all across the country. June alone brought 3 major pro-gun wins. First, GOA and our allies in Congress killed a dangerous DOJ proposal to merge the ATF and DEA into one big super agency. We've already done a video explaining why this was such a terrible idea, but here's the highlights. The merger would have tripled ATF's budget. It would have allowed a future anti-gun administration to unleash 3 times as many federal agents against gun owners. It would have put Big Pharma in a position to influence ATF priorities, focusing on gun registration instead of drug enforcement, and it would weaken accountability for any future ATF director. So yes, stopping this merger was a massive win for gun owners. Next, here in our nation's capital, we saw a whole wave of victories as part of President Trump's efforts to make D.C. safe again. He rolled back several gun control barriers that only punish the law-abiding. D.C.'s concealed carry wait times were slashed, dropping from months to mere days. And the district attorney announced they will no longer prosecute people for the lawful carry of long guns or standard capacity magazines in the district. These reforms in the nation's capital send a clear message across the country. Arbitrary gun laws don't make people safer. They only disarm responsible citizens. Still, in D.C., we saw another major win when the Supreme Court shut down Mexico's lawsuit against Smith & Wesson, a case where GOA was directly involved. This case was a coordinated attempt by anti-gun activists and a foreign government to undermine our Second Amendment. GOA pushed back with a hard-hitting amicus brief because no one, not even a foreign nation, gets to trample our constitutional rights. Now let's talk about a few of the big wins where our legal team was leading the charge. In August, we took a bite out of the Big Apple with a major victory in New York. Before our lawsuit, non-residents, even out-of-state commuters who worked in the city every day, were banned from applying for concealed carry permits. My good friend Carl Higbee of Newsmax served as our lead plaintiff, and thanks to his courage and our legal team's work, he and other GOA members can now exercise their Second Amendment rights when they travel through New York, but also from coast to coast. Then we had a huge win in Virginia where GOA, working alongside a VCDL, secured a court order striking down the state's universal background check law. We've been fighting this unconstitutional mandate for 5 long years, ever since Governor Ralph Blackface Northam signed it into law. Well, thanks to GOA's victory, Virginia gun owners can once again buy and sell firearms privately without government interference. In Missouri, we sued Jackson County after it passed an ordinance designed to undermine the state's preemption law. The ordinance made it illegal for 18 to 20-year-olds to purchase handguns or handgun ammunition, and even criminalized their possession of a so-called semi-automatic assault rifle, a term the county never defined, and GOA filed suit where the Attorney General of Missouri joined us. And just 3 months after we took action, Jackson County backed down and amended its ordinance to remove the unconstitutional provisions. Folks, your support empowers us to push back against local overreach and secure real victories for gun owners across the country. Heading south, Florida gun owners no longer have to count themselves among the last states with a total ban on open carry.
Thanks to a GOA lawsuit and the leadership of the Florida Attorney General.
That ban is gone. Gun owners in the Sunshine State can now open carry freely, and that's a long overdue victory. Finally, over at the home of America's largest pyramid, Memphis, Tennessee, we scored another massive win. GOA shut down a sweeping gun control push by the city, where Memphis was forced to admit that every part of its package, the handgun carry ban, the vehicle storage rule, the so-called assault rifle ban, and their red flag gun confiscation scheme was flat out illegal under Tennessee law. And the judge didn't mince words either. He declared the ordinance was dead as a doornail. So that was another huge win for the Second Amendment. I should also mention that we launched a successful legal challenge against the Going Arms statute in Tennessee, and we won. That ruling effectively turned Tennessee into a constitutional carry state. Sadly, the Republican Attorney General there, Jonathan Skrmetti, is appealing our victory, so the new carry protections will be on hold until next year. Anyway, as you can tell, we've been very busy this year, and 2026 is shaping up to be even bigger, where GOA is pushing for votes on concealed carry reciprocity and a lot of other good things. But I want to emphasize this: none of the victories we experience can happen without you. Your donations, your activism, your willingness to pick up the phone or send an email. That is what makes our wins possible. And your passion for the Second Amendment fuels everything we do. So from all of us at GOA, Happy New Year, and I can't wait to stand with you again in 2026.